have a wonderful moderator in Kristen, and so, I know she's going to pull it off here, but Kristen, we have the opportunity now to say, okay, we've heard all kinds of ideas, we've heard success stories, we've heard about challenges, we know that it's not easy to bring about change, we know there's resistance, but you're going to help us. Exactly. Now, part of the deal with Kristen was we also want to emphasize that there's some great opportunities around to look at other things that are going on. And right now, as we assemble this panel, which is Jim Kurth, Joe Meade, Todd Davidson, Phil Ingrassia, and moderator Kristen, we're going to see a little video that talks about something else that we should be thinking about. So, with that, I think. Yeah, we're just gonna think about something else. Something else goes on in June in addition to Great Outdoors Month. So here we are.
Thanks. I think we're just going to wait for Todd to join us. Thank you. In the water.
I'm in the hospitality.
He's Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Derek has said, I get the distinct honor to be on this panel with wonderful people today to try to help kind of bring a lot of what the discussion has been today together and to really talk about how are we going to move forward in the future. And so if what you don't mind, I'm going to just take a really quick moment to introduce myself, then I'm going to introduce our panelists, and then we're just going to kind of turn it over more into a discussion and ask questions of people, and then hopefully with enough time we'll turn it over also to the audience. So my name is Kristen Sarri. I am the president and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and I appreciate Derek showing that brief clip about an upcoming conference we have taking place June 13th through the 15th. Welcome people to join us. It's actually a free conference, which is not too often what you see in DC, and we're at the Ronald Reagan Building, marinesanctuaries.org/Capitol Hill Ocean Week, also known as CHOW, and you can go and learn more about that. I have this great job, and that is that I am the president of a national nonprofit organization that is set up to be the chief advocate and partner for the National Marine Sanctuary System. And this is both a mighty network, but it's often a network nobody has heard about. I often call these our blue parks. Anybody in the National Park Service, I hope you don't get upset with me, but these are our underwater parks where we preserve natural, cultural, and historic resources for current and future generations of Americans. And they're great outdoor resources. We're 14 sites in about 7 states and 1 territory, all the way from American Samoa to Stellwagen Bank, from Thunder Bay, Michigan, down to the Keys. So it's a great network of areas that I hope people will get out and explore. So with that, let me turn it over to our panel, and let me just do really brief introductions. So first, I have Phil Ingrassia. Did I get that right? Thank you. Who is the president of the Recreational Vehicle Dealers Association. He's also a member of the board of directors of the American Recreation Coalition and an organizer of the Outdoor Recreation Industry Roundtable. Next, I think I can probably say Joe Meade needs no introduction given the award today. But I do want to congratulate Joe on the award and a really distinguished career, both at the Forest Service, but also in service to the American people and helping to really drive impact in the recreation space. So thank you, Joe, very much. The next person joining us is Todd Davidson, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Travel Oregon. He's actually a past chair also and current member of the U.S. Travel and Tourism Advisory Board. He serves on the board of the U.S. Tourism Travel Association, the National Council of State Tourism Directors, and the Western States Tourism Policy Council. And lastly, somebody I had a real privilege to serve with for 2 years here at the Department of Interior is Jim Kurth. He's had a distinguished career in the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I think the one thing I always really appreciated about Jim is the fact that he started out in the refuge system and really kind of built his way up, and learning it from that level all the way up to now where he is as the acting director of the Fish and Wildlife Service is really critical in terms of understanding visitors' experiences as well as the manager side of the equation. So with that, let me turn over just a question for all the panelists. So based on everything that we've heard today and thinking about the future, what do you see coming out of this meeting as our top 2 or 3 actions that we really want to take to help with the outdoor recreation? Where do you think we should go? And maybe I'll just, unless somebody wants to speak up first, I can just kind of go down the row.
Well, sure. You know, one of the things that this event has done over the years is brought people together and shown best practices and things that are already working in the field, and hopefully we can share those with each other. You know, listening to Warren talk about the TVA campgrounds really came home for me because of the RV. 2 challenges we have. You know, we're in a historic golden age of RV sales right now. We're at 3-decade highs. But what are our challenges? Capacity. We don't have enough campgrounds right now to serve all our folks. And 2 is modernization. And so what Warren talked about yesterday really hit home for me. And there's great examples all across the country of that kind of activity. We just need to get the word out and share it more. And I hope we all use what we've learned here today and the contacts that we've made to move outdoor recreation forward, not only with camping, but everything that we've heard about this whole conference.
Joe?
Excellent. Well, let's keep the dream alive. That's my passion and my invite as we all get ready to wrap up another outstanding Partners Outdoors. For me, I think about number 25. There's a lot of fantastic ideas that have come forward, and my top 2 ideas are the following 4. So first of all, we talked about the importance of 4-season ski resorts. Think about a 4-season ski resort and Warren putting their ideas together and leaving the skiing out of the picture. Okay, you heard what Scott and Rick are cooking up, and they're going to take it as a center of excellence across the country. What if we had front country recreation complexes that didn't have skiing but might introduce zip lines or rope courses, and heck, maybe even a food truck service? You know, I know that there's some debate over that with our Tahoe folks. Teasing there. Eric provides great coffee service overlooking a fantastic overlook that I love to see at Emerald Bay, and provides coffee. Hey, why not? So the idea here is, can we bring these ideas together at our recreation complexes that are overloved, deferred maintenance out the window, and really ought to be completely reinvented? Could we bring that model in just as Warren did and fuse together a public-private venture? That's idea number 1. Number 2, I like the idea of a smart home, smart park, smart forest. Now, maybe we need to get the federal family together so we can lift that up as one big idea, and maybe that idea includes maybe a minimum service that's a tier level that's free. Environmental justice provides everybody that access. And then those that want to watch the Netflix in the tent or in the glamping context can do so at, maybe they pay a fee for that. Could we talk together and create something that provides a benefit to everybody? Right now, everybody's in the gray. So why not give everybody a little bit of light, and those that want to pay a little more and help override or run the cost of the benefit, help carry the cost? I think there's things we could dream about to really make that be successful. The second idea that I really just wanted to underscore, I heard a lot this couple of days about authenticity to the outdoor experience. Boy, I went right home to Alaska when we had the Alaska Native conversation and that connection to real life experience. And then I got jealous when the fam tour was going through, the Southwest where I'm going to be retiring. I want to go out there. I want that experience. I want that authenticity. And we heard about that authenticity in several other presentations and discussions, including this afternoon, where we really listened in on some of those benefits. So how can we collectively bring that ecotourism, that real authentic experience into play for our common guests? Well, all of us in this room ought to have one primary goal, and it's to really inspire Americans to love their public lands. If we achieve that, we've satisfied our citizen owners and your customer. That's a home run. The last that I wanted to mention, I guess this would be, 4 of 2, and that is wow with rec.gov. That can really take us to some new places, and I love that little tagline of we'll help America explore. Again, let's put our Imagineering around that open set of data. Let's partner up in an agile environment in a qualitative way to help everybody have an app for that.
And I get to follow Joe, a man totally devoid of passion.
Todd, I'll let you go first next time.
I have 2. No, my first is, don't let this man retire. Embargo his retirement fund. Don't let him go. I have not had the pleasure of working with him as long as many of you in this room, but for the time that I have had the honor and pleasure of working alongside him, it's truly been a joy. He understands the nexus between our public lands, these public resources, recreation. No, these are not my 2 ideas. You are my first idea. But our public lands, recreation, and tourism, the nexus of those 3 things. His sensitivity to that is unprecedented. And so I just want you to know, Joe, in the spirit of the great Babe Ruth quote made famous in Sandlot, heroes get remembered, but legends never die. I'm going to miss you, Mr. Meade, very, very much. My other one, besides making this guy not retire, is very simple. Somebody earlier during the Q&A session said, data's not sexy. Nobody's going to come up to Congress and tell their legislator that we need more federal data. I did. I have, and I will do it again. In fact, I've sat next to Leslie while I've done it. I was in front of Congressman Bishop's committee, and they were talking about FLRIA reauthorization. The point there was that, number one, we felt the fees needed to be reauthorized, but we also felt very strongly that some of those fees needed to be made available for the RIDB, the Recreation Information Database. Because, my friends, you heard here, you are all on notice, Booz Allen Hamilton has said that they're going to go live on October of 2018 with the new and improved rec.gov. But it will not be near the website it could be or should be if it doesn't have the comprehensive, robust database that it needs. Every federal agency, plus you heard Rick's call for state agencies, state park data, and other data to be able to be co-located within this, and co-shared on this common database. That's what consumers want. Consumers do not want to go to multiple websites. The reason I have been such an advocate and wanted to do whatever I could to help Rick, I was honored when Rick and Diane and other members of the team asked me to fly into Golden and sit down and spend a day with them and talk about rec.gov. That was an honor for me. That wasn't work. That was a privilege, because the bottom line is this program must work, because it's how consumers purchase recreation. It's how they purchase travel. You heard reference to personalization earlier today. My whole point with rec.gov is personalization and portability. Okay? If we can build the most comprehensive database of recreation information, state and federal level, county and city level as well, and have that information available, and then portable so that I can pull it into our website in Oregon, traveloregon.com. So now as folks are planning that recreation-oriented trip, they're looking for that pristine trailhead that's going to take them into a wilderness area that they've never stepped foot before. But if they're like me, before I go in on a backpacking trip, I spend some time driving there, and I probably spend that last night in a hotel, having one decent meal before I spend the next week probably eating, freeze-dried oatmeal and summer sausages and hard cheeses, and try to, make the most of it. They need to make that connection. They need to be able to plan that entire trip. So data is sexy, data is important, consumers need to be able to personalize this data, and it needs to be able to be portable, so they may find recreation.gov. They may. But you've got 50 state tourism websites and 5 territorial websites. You've got tourism information available on IANTA's site. You've got tourism information available on local destination site. You're able to harness, when federal agencies are saying we're not permitted to advertise, by doing that, you're able to harness hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in advertising prowess, because that's what you have locked up in all the state tourism offices and the local destination marketing organizations. So if you want to be able to get the word out about recreational opportunities, I think that's a great way to do it.
Well, I have to not only follow Joe, I have to go last, and perhaps everything's been said. I do think one of the most important things we need to be thinking about is how our nation is changing. It may be a golden age for RVs because old guys like me and Joe have worked 40 plus years, are retiring and got a few pennies to do that. But the generation and the demographic that's replacing us is very different than, our generation, the baby boomers. 80% of the people in this country live in cities. They're much more ethnically diverse. The basic constituent of fish and wildlife conservation traditionally were hunters and anglers. Well, the kids growing up here in the Washington, D.C. metro area don't do very much of that. We have to find different ways and different places to meet people to start this process, these stepping stones of engagements, to build a constituency for the future. We have to go into the urban areas, these mini parks, these mini sites. We have to start to provide equity and access to the outdoors. It simply doesn't exist in many of our major cities. We have to play upon what interests people, like a healthy place for my kids to go out and play, where it's safe. It can't just be outdoors. It has to be safe. And, these small areas are only going to be maintained through partnerships. The government can't own them all. We've had some fantastic 2-acre mini parks that are civic associations with just a little bit of seed money from the government, because that demographic, the hunting and angling community will always be a cornerstone of conservation, but their percentage of the total population is not growing. It's not maintaining itself. And that's okay as long as we bring more people into the stewardship of the great outdoors, as long as we bring more people to appreciate it. And that's going to take us, using technology to engage a digital generation that has always gotten their information in ways that are different from us. We have to open our eyes to some of the opportunities around us. Most of us, when we think of the great spectacles of nature, I think of the things in the refuge system like the cranes and the geese at Bosque del Apache in New Mexico, or the caribou on the coastal plain of the Arctic Refuge. Have you ever gone over to Cape May, New Jersey to see those horseshoe crabs coming up on the beach? There's kids out by their gazillions to look at these prehistoric creatures come and lay their eggs. And we've got to open our minds to the things that evoke curiosity in kids and their parents, and give them access, equitable access to places to learn and grow and become part of our community.
So thank you guys very much for all the comments. I'm going to try to pick up and maybe integrate a little bit about what you said. And I'll start with where Joe was, which is we need to inspire Americans to love our public lands, or that's what you want to do. And I think it then ties into Jim that if we're going to inspire them, we have to recognize that there's a lot of changing demographics out there, and that we have to figure out different ways to engage, to make the outdoors accessible to people, and kind of start where people are at and bringing it in. And then really kind of picking up on Phil and Todd's point that part of all of that work is making sure that when people have a good experience, they have a good experience when they do there. So the modernization, the capacity issues, and because of the changing demographics, or people are so used to that smartphone and clicking on something, the data and that kind of what rec.gov can actually do are all going to be important components of this. So since this panel is supposed to focus on actions, I would like to ask you to give us one action that either you are going to do to help us address these kind of 3 things, or what you think we should be doing as a group. If you want to say more than one, absolutely fine, but but kind of give us one action. So we're going out there trying to lead the way forward. Joe, you're going to be last because nobody liked going after you. So, Todd, I'm going to start with you because you had that unfortunate experience.
I guess that's fair. In the spirit of Congress, though, I could yield my time to Joe. I don't want to be redundant, but if there was an action step that I would put in front of my federal partners that are here in this room, it would be to prioritize the population of the RIDB, the database, to make sure that we had the most robust, comprehensive data available so that it could then be made portable to a variety of folks. I don't think we need federal agencies necessarily developing apps, candidly. I think what we need is our federal partners to be focused on the data that can then fuel the apps, because then the apps can be built by the private sector, or they can be built by the various trade associations. I'm sitting over here at the table with a woman from the Archery Association, and to be able to access the information that might be useful to her members and come up with something that would be a specific archery-oriented app would probably be more appropriate and more relevant than for the Forest Service or the Bureau of Reclamation to come up with an app that highlighted all the various sites. Again, that's not what consumers are looking for. They're looking for something that either targets their interest or it targets where it is they want to go. They either want to go to Oregon or they want to go somewhere and go fly fishing, for example. That's how they want to search. They don't think, I want to go to federal lands. That's just not how they're going to be wired. So we need to make that information available to them. The one other aspect I'll add to that is dovetailing off the couple of comments that have been made about how diverse we are becoming and the changing demographics of the populations that are interested in recreating. There's a gentleman in Oregon who has an organization called Vive Northwest, and he is not satisfied with Google Translator. With all due respect to Google, they're obviously a powerhouse, but he doesn't feel Google Translator is adequate. He's come up with his own program and he's come up with his own app, and he's focused on helping urban kids from Hispanic families recreate, to find the outdoors, and he does that through a translation app, and he takes all the data we could push at him. So again, here's a place for the RIDB to be able to be repurposed and reutilized just by making the data portable.
Jim, you want to go next?
I think we need to meet people where they are and have synergy of interest and ideas. I love the discussion earlier about the Kennedy Space Center. I bet most of the people in the room don't know that the 145,000 acres of the Kennedy Space Center is also Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. And we love hooking people that have come to learn about our space program. It's interesting, many of them come to learn about space history. The main turquoise blue NASA building there, people still call the I Dream of Jeannie building. And when they're there, they can learn that some of the best fishing in the world is there at Mosquito Lagoon on the refuge, and it's on the Florida Birding Trail. It's got some of the best birding in the United States down there. And if they really want to learn something, they can see that the main launch pad for the shuttle is now protected by a coastal resiliency project that we did down there, creating and enhancing dunes that now keep storm surges and tropical events from overwashing the old shuttle launch pad. There's a synergy of things, and we've got to realize people have diverse interests. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Midway Atoll National Wildlife Refuge, which is part of the Papahanaumokuakea National Marine Monument, the largest protected area on the planet, to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Midway. And we'll have a nice ceremony there, and we love our birds and the coral reefs, but the Navy's going to live stream it to their bases all across the world because it's important to sailors and veterans and Marines for different reasons. And so we can find the synergy of our interest. That marine monument, that name, their theme is where culture and nature are one. The powerful interest in Hawaiian native culture there is as much of an interest to people as the wildlife and the fish are. And we've got to find those synergies and help people as they explore and learn about the outdoor world to explore and learn things that they're interested in as well.
Phil?
Well, one of the things I do want to talk about is a little bit of the diversity of my business that we're seeing, and that is we're seeing Gen Xers and millennials now are the main RV campers out there. So our industry is having to react to a new segment of people coming in, because what's driving the RV industry volume are entry-level and mid-priced RVs. We're doing motorhomes and we're doing big fifth wheels that you've all seen, but the volume that's fueling the increase in the RV business is the entry-level product, which has brought down our average age by about 4 years. We're at about 45 years old now. So Gen Xers and millennials are driving RV industry growth. And those people are different buyers. They want connectivity. They want slide-out rooms and all the bells and whistles. They want Wi-Fi. And you've talked about some of the solutions to some of those issues at this conference. So that's all very good. And the other thing I would urge people is not to wait. You know, Warren talked about the reason that he's doing the work he is with TVA. It was a crisis. You know, why do we have to wait until there's no money or the facilities are so degraded that it's a crisis situation? Let's be proactive on some of these issues and work together to fix what the problems are and to be there for the coming outdoor recreationists that need and want the facilities. So let's not wait. Let's not make it be a crisis before we act.
Joe.
Well, my interest and my desire to put some action into motion is to help me get rid of some jealousy. The outdoor recreation industry roundtable here just about a month ago had an opportunity to meet with Secretary Zinke, and I understand they put some really attractive public-private venture proposals forward, and I am jealous. So I want to ask of my partners in this room, you know, Warren and Eric and Steve and Rick Cables and others, we can dream that big too. Let's look at this recreation complex concept. Let's look at Scott's success at working with partners like Vail and Jeff Marcellet's experience on the Tahoe Basin with Heavenly. And let's move into some pilots and let's create the opportunity to provide those places that have the infrastructure brought through private investment, that has those guest services like we heard Scott and Rick highlighting, where you could hear that darn elk or whatever it was that they were listening in their little listening ear to. I didn't catch the slide. But anyhow, we can do these things if we put our ideas into action. And I would recommend that we invite our deputy chief to give us the latitude to find some pilots, connect them with some partners, and create some of Warren's examples with TVA and the National Forest System.
Great. Let me just pivot away on a different topic that I think is challenging as we try to get more people outdoors, and that is, we started off the morning talking about this, the importance of kind of the variety of the experience. You've got to give people different options to explore the outdoors in the ways that they would most enjoy. That can actually be really challenging for managers, for the tourism industry, as they try to balance different uses. We see it a lot in our sanctuary programs where we have rec fishing and diving and commercial fishing and trying to look at all of these kind of different uses. So when you think about the next steps there, what are kind of lessons you would recommend or things that we need to look at to say, how do we get people outdoors in such a way that both protects these environments for future generations, but also allows for that kind of multiple use to take place? And let me see, we haven't started with, Jim, we'll start with you.
You know, I think like so much of what we do, it's something that you have to solve by looking at the landscape at a different scale. Nobody can or really should provide everything. I mean, I know in National Wildlife Refuges, we're not going to have ski slopes. We got a lot of flat land, for one thing. We're not going to do some of the things that our partner agencies are. So if we work together and are knowledgeable and use technology like recreation.gov to be broadly aware in our part of the world, not in our little area inside our signs, but in the broader world, how to help our visitors find a full spectrum of recreational activities, then I think we can be much much more successful in our customer service rather than all trying to recreate on every single acre, every opportunity that there is. We have to think at scale that meets the interests and desires of the people that are coming to our places and help them to take advantage of a full suite of opportunities. It requires us not to be territorial. Somebody mentioned about we need to quit fighting so that everybody needs to know what the difference between a park and a forest and a refuge is. There's 535 people on the hill up there that need to know the difference. Well, you people need to know the difference, but your average citizens, all they need to know is it's a nice place to visit. Our predecessor in my job years ago was coming back on a trip, and he sat next to a lady that said, "Oh, you work for the Fish and Wildlife. I was just at one of your places. I love Yellowstone very much." And he said, "Thank you."
Phil?
Well, I think here's where the private sector can really help the public land agencies, and we've seen examples of it across the board. Earlier this week, I had a chance to talk with some people at KOA, and they've got a partnership with Ventura County, California, and it's called Ventura County Ranch, and it's a KOA there, and they've built what is now one of the top 10 family campground areas to visit in the country. And some of the activities they have are zip lining. They've got mountain hiking and rock climbing. But the local lore is that Bigfoot is in that mountainous area. So they've got Bigfoot hiking. They go out and look for Bigfoot on Saturday nights. So I think when we bring in the local tourism area with the federal land managers, and you've just got a combination that can really focus on what that local area is known for, but you're also providing access for the public, the private investor is getting something out of it, and of course the public land agency is benefiting from that as well. So I think the public sector with the marketing, the marketing prowess that most of them have is that's where the public and private sector can work together again.
I'll follow you.
Teasing, totally. A couple of ideas that I'll throw out. I heard the question really framed around multiple uses and relevancy. And so I'm thinking back of Jamie's conversation with us yesterday with the Student Conservation Corps. One of the challenges we're all going to have in the years in front of us is the capacity to do the work we need to do and to reach that next generation. I was visiting with Jamie at a break and just highlighting, could it be, as the Forest Service implements the National Forest System Trail Stewardship Act, which calls for us to double our volunteerism. Right now, we don't have the capacity to even keep up with the volunteerism interest that's out there. Could we, should we, and can we turn to organizations like SCA to become our skilled turnkey resources that oversee Conservation Service Corps crews that connect with the next generation? So how can we imagine a future together where we strengthen each of what we bring to the table? SCA and Volunteer Outdoor Colorado are great examples where they come in with that higher level of skill and oversight and supervision. Can we turn to them and have them carry out roles that we have done in the past to help us then ignite more YCC and Conservation Service Corps outcomes? So those were some of the ideas that were coming to my mind.
For me, the multiple use idea, and there's been a real theme of collaboration. I've heard that come up a lot. And with collaboration comes compromise. Derek is exactly right. This is not a win-lose environment that we live within. This is certainly something where everybody can walk away and feel that they have won. They didn't have to sell their soul to be able to get a particular project done or something like that. And I think of a couple of examples, like the designation of a wilderness area on Mount Hood, and it had become obviously a very, very popular mountain biking area for the citizens of Portland. You're 45 minutes from the city center, and it was not only great for international visitors and domestic visitors, but Portlanders just love being able to go out there and mountain bike. And the designation of a wilderness area, as many of you in this room know, probably all of you in this room know, would preclude mountain bikes from being permitted. But what they were able to do in that spirit of compromise is work with the mountain biking community, IMBA and others, work with the groups that were very interested in having designated wilderness, and carve out what are basically national recreation corridors within that wilderness area. So that they're not all the trails that were once mountain biking trails, but some of the trails that were, and probably the most popular, the most relevant, the most appropriate trails were set aside to still be available to mountain bikers. The other example I'd give you is that we're currently working with the Forest Service on something we're calling the Oregon Timber Trail. Picture the Pacific Crest Trail for mountain bikers, okay? And currently it doesn't exist, but these trails are already there, though, so there's no land disturbing activity that would occur. It's either single track or it's existing gravel road, Forest Service road, and there's, you know, Oregon's only about 350 miles long, but this is 650 miles of trail, so it gives you an idea of how much you're zigzagging and, you know, okay? But, and it goes through 4 different zones, works with a variety of different forests, and we're sitting down with the various user groups because you're going to put mountain bikes on trails that some of the backcountry horsemen really love. And we want to avoid the conflicts just, well, with any of the user groups. And so to be able to sit down together and look at alternatives to the trail is that kind of collaboration and compromise so that the Oregon Timber Trail moves forward and certain places are held sacrosanct for backcountry horsemen and for others as well. So I think that kind of a spirit of collaboration is going to be, you know, pivotal as we go forward.
Derek, do we have time for some questions as well? Great. Any questions out in the audience?
Hi. Sorry, I'm going to be selfish and use the power of the microphone to ask a question. I'm a millennial. I'm 28. And I love outdoor recreation. Obviously, here I am. But like the vast majority of people in my generation, I live in a relatively small place in an expensive city, and I have loans. So my ability to buy gear to go camping, kayaking, canoeing, things like that is relatively limited. So how do you see the future of renting gear either before you get to a destination or when you get to a destination, or the sharing economy? How do you see that impacting the future of getting people from my generation outdoors and recreating on these fantastic public lands?
For RVs, you know, rental is a big part of the RV business right now, and there are many options out there for folks who want to travel by motorhome or travel trailer but don't have the capacity or the storage area or whatever they need to do that. So we've embraced it, and so we really do think that you're seeing more campgrounds that have RVs or cabins out there that people can reserve much like they would a hotel room right now. So those options are out there. Do we need to do a better job of letting people know, or does that need to be expanded maybe to some of the public campgrounds as well as what's available on the private? That's another, you know, revenue stream that certainly public agencies can look at.
Another piece that the Forest Service is leaning into significantly is modernizing how we show up around outfitting and guiding. A lot of times we're learning, especially just as you outlined, living urban, you don't have a place to have a mountain bike to store it. But if you could get out with an outfitter and book an activity for an afternoon or a day, get a fantastic set of experiences, drive some state economy. So we're striving to open up the simplification for outfitters and guides to be able to provide those types of benefits and services on the National Forest. We've had a pretty tedious, bureaucratic, slowed process and even moratoriums in some of our more urban areas like the greater Mount Bakersfield-Snoqualmie area around Seattle, even down towards Portland, Oregon. So we're trying and striving to simplify our policy, our procedure, and connect more with outfitters and guides so folks can get out on an outfitted trip. And part of what we're discovering as well is, you know what, an outfitted public often is a better visitor than a self-outfitted public. So.
I would just add, I know there are companies and services, for example, that would rent kayaks, canoes. We have companies in Oregon that would rent mountain bikes for multiple day trips. Some of the backpacking gear, that part I'm not sure about. I know as a graduate of Iowa State University, there was always a place I could go and I could rent gear from them kind of on the cheap. So for college students, that might be available. But as far as private sector businesses I might be able to go to, I'm not sure. But I do want to echo Joe's sentiment about outfitter guides. You seem like a nice guy, like to keep you around for a while. And if you were to grab a kayak and head down the Rogue River, I don't know if Chris Dent's still in the room or not, but Blossom Bar is a class 5. And if you've never kayaked before, you know, like I said, you seem like a really nice guy. So going with an outfitter guide would be the preferable way for you to be able to kayak or raft the Rogue River and a lot of these experiences. You're out there on your own, but you're with a guide who can help you navigate some of that also. But there are services out there that are providing you that ability to rent gear.
I want to thank you for that question because it's a perfect segue into what I want to ask. I want to take up for all the generations that are behind me, the baby boomers, and ask a question. And I don't know if this is the most relevant panel to ask, but it's getting close to the end. And it's been something that's been on my mind the whole 2 days. Everybody talks about the importance of reaching out to younger people. Now, I'm lucky. I taught at Idaho State for 25 years, by the way, and I'm taking up for those kids there too. I'm lucky. I have about 12 mountain bikes in my shop, about 15 motorcycles, and I have a triple axle fifth wheel, which you will remove from my cold, dead hands. But you know what? None of my students that I taught for 25 years can afford any of that. These kids that are coming up have enormous debt from student loans, and I think I'm looking and reading the Wall Street Journal today talking about everybody in the world is forecasting recession coming down the road, and a worse one than the last time. What happens when these kids, who we all, I think, acknowledge don't have the same connection that my generation did with the outdoors, grow up into a world where all of a sudden they view public land as something that they don't have a visceral connection with, that's just really expensive to maintain? What are we going to do then?
I'm going to jump in on that one. It's one that I know my deputy chief has a passion for. We have, I think, at least increased our participation of young youth by more than 30% in the 4.5, 5 years she's been deputy chief. We now have more than 11,000 youth engaged in the stewardship of our national forest system, and particularly through the Conservation Service Corps, a program that partners here are active with. That gives us, that in the Resource Assistance Program, gives us the ability to also reach segments of our population that match the diversity and the demographics of our population. So I believe this reaching the next generation, the leadership that all of our agencies have been given, and I believe leadership that will sustain into this changing administration, are integral ways that will continue to be relevant, and through Conservation Service Corps, through YCC, and through the resource assistant programs we have under Public Land Corps Authority. Those are ways that we can truly connect with our next generation, and I'll invite all of our partners in this room to help be sponsors of those crews, and many of them are. And so through our four-season resorts, through our concessions, through a lot of our programs, and gosh, what's the one in the Shenandoah in the National Park? I think just a year or so ago, they actually put a group of our kids to work out of Job Corps and actually renovated a historic barn. So, you know, there are things we can do. We just need to imagine together, share resources together, and get those youth connected.
Jim?
I think they told me this one was a little bit scratchy. I think, you know, we call it the stepping stones of engagement. It's really gateway drugs to the outdoors. I mean, many of you have had really wilderness, backcountry, high-level experiences, but that wasn't your first, you know. And I think particularly we have to look at the changing face of America again. I was fascinated reading a study the other day that said if you ask African Americans, would you like to go for a walk, a very high percentage of them say yes. And if you ask them whether they want to go on a hike, they're like, no, you know. Our trails, we learned in Southern California, were mowed too narrowly to provide comfort from people from an urban setting. The Hispanic community that used some of those refuges, if you don't have a picnic table, they're not going to come. You know, family and things and food go together. And so I think we've got to recognize we have a lot to learn about each and every community where we live, the different cultural dimensions, and find those easy stepping stones. For me, it was the first bluegill I caught on a cane pole. That was my gateway drug. All of you are probably thinking about what were those things early in your life that made you fall in love with being outside. And they simply are different today in a more urban, more ethnically diverse country. And we have to learn and grow and adapt, because they're never going to get into those high-end things. They're not going to rent somebody else's hiking shoes and sleep in somebody else's sleeping bag. They're going to have to want to go all in to go into those more in-depth outdoor experiences. But if we don't give them the stepping stones of engagement to get there, then I don't think we'll ever hook them.
Can I just pick up on something and ask if there's a private or private-public partnership to be had here? I mean, the question that is raised is very important. It is very expensive to get to these places, go outside. It's of the benefit to public land managers or public water managers, because these are going to be your future constituents. These are the people that'll go to Congress and advocate for the resources. It's very important to the private sector, because this will be also the growing base that'll buy RVs or be tourists. So if you look at that as a particular challenge and actions ahead, have we either ever heard of very good kind of private or private-public partnerships that are just out there trying to figure out how to overcome this barrier?
Well, I think for the RV business, the gateway drug for RVs is tent camping. And there are millions of tent campers out there that are not necessarily able to buy an RV now, but hopefully down the road they will be. And you talk about data and the studies that are going on right now. There's a study, if you Google it, it's called the North American Camping Report 2017. It was just released a few weeks ago by KOA. And it really, whether you're a public campground operator or a private one, it talked about all the diversity of camping, and it is actually increasing. So the idea that people aren't getting out there camping, I don't know where that's coming from, but the data isn't showing that, at least from this latest report. So we're very excited about that, and we have affordability messages and all kinds of things that we're trying to do through the RV industry to drive people into the outdoors and into RVs. So I encourage people to take a look at that report. Like I said, it's fresh information, just came out, and it really does talk about a diversifying camping public that's out there right now.
I would just add, if I could, for those in the younger generation that are recreating, you've got to harness that. You've got to let them become your evangelists to the others. And we're currently not really set up to do that very well. The access to the broadband, and no, this is not a plug. Nobody was slipping me 20s from my buddy from Access Parks over here. But the concept of being able to, stand on the rim of Crater Lake, take a picture with your buddies, and then post it in real time, because that's what they want to do. It's not about being able to sit on one of the rocking chairs at the lodge at Crater Lake and play video games all day. That's not why people are wanting to put Wi-Fi in. We want to put the Wi-Fi in. Thank you, Joe. Joe liked what I said. I'm going to contribute this back to your retirement fund, Mr. Meade. But here, I'll give it to your wife. Where is she? But seriously, I know that there are some within the state and federal agencies that have been reluctant to bring Wi-Fi in, and yet you hear, yesterday about the program, and Joe, I believe you were involved in it, where $300 we were putting in something that was basically a solar-powered data kiosk that had a kind of a short-range Wi-Fi, and you could download the information so that if nobody was there necessarily staffing that particular place, you could access that information. I mean, come on. This is what folks are looking for. And to be able to give the millennials, the centennials, and whatever other handle we want to put on them, I mean, for goodness sake, I like to do that too, okay? Every time I'm at Crater Lake, I take a picture and tell everybody, I'm here, you're not, ha! Because it's beautiful up there. And, so I'm glad there's Wi-Fi in the lodge, because on the backside of the lake, there's not. So anyway, you've got to be prepared to tap into because this is how they share. This has taken the place of what our folks probably did when they came home with the slideshow or the Super 8 movie and invited the neighbors over. They're doing it in real time, and we need to tap into that and harness the power of the millennials that are getting out and recreating right now.
Bob Radcliffe. I just got one more comment, Derek. You've been talking a little bit about portable access and opportunities, and Ben's question and follow-up question for the millennial generation. We've been finding in the Park Service partnerships with nonprofit organizations. We've not talked a lot about that, and our friends groups and other organizations are actually probably serving more first-time people in their opportunities in the outdoors. And so I want to point out ideas like gear libraries that are popping up around the country where you can check out equipment for free. And I think there's greater opportunity in working with organizations as well that provide nonprofit educational opportunities, clubs, organizations that are out there. So somehow we've not really explored that as part of this conversation, and I really want to point out that our work with nonprofits is accelerating and getting a lot more youth out in the outdoors than they have in many, many years. And for example, the Association of Outdoor Recreation Education is 400 colleges and universities and military morale, welfare, and recreation programs. They serve tens of thousands of people annually, tens of thousands. And so they far exceed any of our commercial outfitting and any of our other services. So I want to make sure that we don't leave them out of this conversation. And they're not necessarily represented here. So as a thought, if we're going to explore the whole spectrum, we should definitely